Trio, an automated insulin delivery system built by the open source community, has officially launched. It's a new branch of iAPS, which I've covered on the show, and uses the same OREF algorithm, but offers key improvements. Its developers believe Trio is not only safer, but also more responsive to community feedback. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and management with tech leaders, physicians, and those thriving with diabetes. I've personally used both iAPS and the new Trio system. It runs on an iPhone with a DIY app connecting to an insulin pump and CGM to regulate glucose levels. One of today's guests gets over 80% time in range without ever logging carbs or manually bolusing for meals. Just one of many success stories. Joining me today are Teresa and Magnus, who have been on the show before and who have been pivotal in Trio's development. They're now pushing forward with version 1.0, which promises a sleek, user-friendly design, faster performance, expanded caregiver functions, and more. If you missed it, check out my previous conversation with Teresa and Magnus, where we discussed the powerful OREF algorithm behind iAPS. Still a very relevant episode, as Trio builds on this dynamic system. The episode is linked in the show notes. Also, we have launched the Diabetech newsletter. You can sign up to stay up to date on the latest in diabetes tech, upcoming content on here, and exclusive giveaways. A link to that is also in the show notes. Lastly, if you want to see more videos about Trio or open source in general, give this video a like. Keep in mind that anything you hear on this podcast or content on my social media and YouTube channel is not medical advice. Always consult with your physician before making changes to your healthcare. Trio is experimental and not approved by the FDA or regulatory authorities. You take full responsibility for building and using Trio, and you do so at your own risk. Magnus and Teresa, welcome back to the show. Apparently it's been a year that you've been on. That's crazy.
Yep. We're getting ready to go back to D-Data in November, and that's where we recorded the first one. So
Yeah.
it's been a minute.
Yeah, so last time you were on the show, we talked about iAPS, which we'll get into kind of a new direction from there with Trio. So first, can you just explain to all of my viewers, what is Trio?
It is a implementation of the OREF algorithm, which is what was developed by Dana Lewis and her team, Scott Liebrand. All of those guys came together and made the OREF algorithm that is in OpenAPS. And Trio is an app that uses that algorithm on the Apple platform. So it's an Apple app that you can build, and it will control your pump and reads CGM readings from your CGM, and using the algorithm, determine what insulin you need.
So why do you come on today? What is like the news here with Trio? What's going on?
All of these open source automated insulin delivery systems, they're built and developed by a few people. And when we started talking out loud about iAPS a year ago, a lot of people started using it, and a lot of people started to ask us how they could help. And we got a lot of requests from developers who wanted to join. And unfortunately, the way iAPS was being managed, it was kind of hard for new developers to help out. So a lot of us got together and we decided to do what is called, in the software world, is called a fork. This is an open source thing where you take the software that's already there and you move it in a different direction, right? So we got together, we decided on how we wanted to do software development. We decided what we wanted to focus on, who we wanted to join, and we made a new name for it. That's Trio.
Before we dive deep into this new system, last time you were on the show, Teresa, you told us all about how you were using this app, or the fact that you don't really use it because you don't need to. Can you explain to everyone the possibilities with Trio when and how people are using it or barely using it and letting it do its thing?
So I think it's important that if you've watched the previous episode, then I don't bolus, I don't do anything. I forget about diabetes 99, or at least I forget about my diabetes 99% of the time. I worry about everybody else's by doing this app and doing community service, all that kind of stuff. But my own, I don't think about it hardly ever. And that's thanks to Trio and apps like Trio. And but I do think it's important that I am definitely an outlier. I'm not the general user. So I really don't want anybody coming on here thinking I can just download Trio and never bolus again. It has taken me years and lots of time and diligence in tweaking things and learning how this system works so that I know what to change and when to change it if things aren't working right. But that said, I think in the last, since we started Trio, we'll say, since we forked, I think I have bolused maybe a total of 5 times, and we forked in February. And those were times when, like, I was doing a competition with somebody, and so they were tracking my blood sugars, and I was tracking theirs, and we were having a competition to see who could get more time in range, and I didn't want them to win. So so that's what inspired me to bolus the few times that I have. But in general, I still go above range because it's still responding to my blood sugar rising. The algorithm is set up so that it can give me more faster than any other system. But the key to being able to do that successfully is to not have it do it so much that once you get to the top and you start to fall, it can still stop you from crashing. And that's the reason why I'm able to be successful. That's why I am okay with getting to 200, maybe 250. Without intervening, because I know if I intervene, then I'm probably going to crash afterwards, and I have to just let it go.
That works for you, Teresa. It doesn't work for me. So I bolus for meals and I use exercise mode when I work out. But I mean, for the rest of the 23 hours a day, Trio has my back. I don't do anything, and I always wake up at target.
Yeah, and I'll say from my experience, I was having good results, great results. Maybe I mean over 80% for the 90-day, maybe over 85%. But I did see I had a lot of room for improvement, and I wasn't putting the time in that I needed to get to where many people are, which is 90% plus in range, whether they're bolusing or not. And eating kind of, whatever they want. And I do see myself one day going back to Trio, especially when the new one comes out.
It's an amazing system that I was talking to Carol at Loop and Learn yesterday, actually. And we were talking about like expectations of these systems, both Loop and Trio. And I think it is great to have a goal of not being able to bolus. It's great to have a goal of 100% time in range. But for me, my 85 to 90% time in range, which is phenomenal for a majority of the population, of the diabetes population, right? Having that much time in range with little effort is unheard of. But in the DIY world, there's always this, yeah, but it's only 85. If you bolus, what could you get? And And that is true. If I bolused and if I counted my carbs, I could probably get 95 to 100% time in range. But for me, the mental relief after 25 years of this disease, to be able to say, I can just do nothing and get 85 is worth the mental load going away versus having to keep that mental load just to get that 95 to 100%. Like you've got to weigh which one makes sense for you.
And Trio is such a great representation of where we're going with all of the FDA cleared systems and where those companies are trying to take them. I know that they are all working to create an algorithm that's not just hybrid closed loop, which is what we have now, but make it fully closed loop so that users are making nearly to zero decisions a day and just letting their tech do it. And seeing Teresa use it like that and achieve such great results, and I know there are other people out there doing it as well, is great to see. And this always happens with the open source community. They come out with it first, and then hopefully 3 to 5 years later, we see it with FDA cleared systems. You're kind of the testing grounds. Yeah, so I just want to remind my viewers, and everyone should go listen to our episode on iAPS, because a lot of that still holds true when it comes to algorithm and the power of it. But kind of just explain to our listeners, what are some of the advantages to using this OREF1 algorithm?
So it has a lot more flexibility in terms of catching you when you underdose for a meal, or say you have a sudden stressful event and your blood sugar starts to rise for no apparent reason, right? We know it's stress, but your system doesn't know that. And Trio is able to more quickly adapt and compensate for that rise in blood sugar, or conversely, a fall in blood sugar that you're not anticipating, and protect you from the extreme highs and extreme lows that you might see without a system like this.
So for this new branch or fork, what does the team look like? How many people are involved?
So we have, I actually counted it the other day, we had 49 developers and volunteers involved in getting Trio to the place it needed to be in order to launch it. So that, and that happened on August 17th. We launched Trio so that anybody can go and download it now. But it took 49 people, 49 developers and volunteers. Not all of them are coding because I'm one of them and I'm not a coder. It was truly a huge group effort. A lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion, and constructive criticism, which is something that is so valuable in development. To be able to say, I don't think that's the right way to do it. Let's try this way. You can see a lot of that, and a lot of that happens where a general user could view it if they wanted to. It's not all behind closed doors. So you can go on GitHub, and for any of these changes that have been made, which are called commits, once they're integrated into the code, you can go and read in the pull request or PR all the conversation that the developers have had between each other about, hey, this line of code needs to do this, or have you thought about this, or this might impact this. And so I think it's awesome to be able to see people on opposite sides of the world sometimes talking about one line of code that ultimately, in a selfish way, helps me control my diabetes so I don't have to think about it. And I'm in awe by it.
This is all about transparency, and maybe that's one of the things that we were missing before. And we've gone from 1 or 2 people being in charge of all the code and all of the development into being, well, what Teresa said, over 40 people, and we've organized this similar to the way professional software development is done. It's still volunteer. It's still open source. No one's getting paid. It's not being commercialized. I mean, it's nothing like that. But we're using professional development methods in order to keep this safe and what is called peer reviewed, which means that whenever I make a change to the code, someone else actually has to look through that code, understand it, and approve it. And not only one, or two, or three, depends on the part of the code. Not important. The important thing is that all of the development is transparent and all of it is peer reviewed.
Support for the podcast comes from ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care, skin care, and much more. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/detective to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/detective, ZocDoc.com/detective. Yeah, and all of this is kind of the power of what open source is. It's all of these people from all areas of the world getting together and working to create the best system, and in this case, Trio algorithm, user interface, whatever it is, so that everyone can benefit from it and it can continue to evolve. And especially when it comes to diabetes, treating diabetes, giving insulin and reading numbers, it's so important to get that right. Because people's lives are at stake, and there's always a risk when you're going and using a system like this or any open source. You just have to understand that you're doing this at your own risk, but there are so many other people out there that are willing to support you and help guide you in any way, in ways that you need. So tell me the story behind the name. Why is this app called Trio?
Well, so we were discussing kind of like just what makes this algorithm work. Through that conversation, we came up with it ended up being a few different sets of three. It was kind of odd how they all seem to be groups of three. Things like your pump, your phone, your CGM. Those are three components to make Trio work. The other things were the three settings that are essential to make Trio work: your basal rate, your insulin sensitivity, and your carb ratio. Those things are essential. And then it kind of grew from there, where some people were saying you have the person with diabetes, you have their caregiver, and then you have their medical provider. Like, without all three of those components, you're not going to be successful with your diabetes management if you don't have those three things.
And when it comes to the logo, I mean, it uses the three colors from the history of the app. It starts with FreeIPSX and iAPS and then Trio. So that's another set of three things that we wanted to combine.
Yeah, and I know Teresa designed it. It's so awesome looking, and it's cool that the logo itself shows off this incredible history of how, you're giving an homage to all of these steps that it's taken, which is so important. So many brilliant people have been involved. So this
Absolutely.
version of Trio is 0.2.0. So it's not even version 1 yet. It's not even version 1 yet. Why is this 0.2.0?
Well, we didn't want everybody to have to wait. The whole mantra of our community is we are not waiting. We knew it was going to take time to turn this idea that we had into something bigger and better Like we have all of these ideas that we're working on that are that are happening, and we knew that was going to take time because we also want to do it right. We want to make sure that we're not introducing anything that's going to break. You know, we prioritize safety, peer review, and community driven. Like those are kind of our trio. Um, our our focuses or mantra.
We had to release something because a lot of users were getting anxious. So we decided to do a release that is probably. I mean, I've been working in software development well forever, and this is one of the most boring releases ever from a user perspective because it looks exactly like it used to. There's no, well, at least very little visible change, but there's a lot of changes behind it, a lot of safety, a lot of bugs that have been fixed, a lot of stuff that has been added backend to make sure that it's safe and that it's a foundation that we can use to, you know, build what we ultimately want to build.
Yeah, I know that there are a few features that weren't there when we last spoke, specifically like live activity, and I believe maybe a new widget. Can you just tell us a little bit about some of those new features that people may have not heard about from our last conversation?
Sure. I mean, we had to add something, right? I mean, some kind of eye candy. So, a couple of features or possibilities have been added to iOS since iAPS was first released, and the most important one is I think it came with the iPhone. Was it 13? It got the live activities and the little what's it called, the dynamic island on top. So basically, what we're doing is that we're now showing your blood glucose is always present on the top of your screen, and on your lock screen there's a widget which shows your current BG, your IOB, and you know the graph.
There it
Well,
is.
there's the dynamic island, and if you lock your screen, I'm guessing
Yep.
we're going to see something.
For people
It's the
watching on
future
YouTube,
version,
they're showing it to
Uh,
us.
the future
Fine,
version,
Okay.
but this,
Wow.
exactly.
Can you zoom out a little bit? Perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. So cool.
And those are helpful features that we could add without any safety issues or anything like that. So they're convenient features, and you know it's helpful.
What about when it comes to CGM support? Is there anything new there or anything you're kind of working toward?
yes, we had a lot of help, and we actually, in terms of CGMs, we now have the Dexcom One Plus that is compatible with Trio. And we also got a lot of help from Marianne Barker, who integrated um, a lot of the components that are from Loop and made them more seamlessly integrated into Trio than they were in previous versions.
Wow. For those who don't know what Loop is an open source app that's been around, I think, since 2016 for iPhone. And it's been like a gold standard of open source algorithm that's widely used. And then you've got Tidepool Loop and an FDA cleared version of that coming to the Twist Pump. So definitely another open source app that's worth taking a look at. And I know that that Trio and other versions of it have a lot of inspiration and even some parts of the app that were directly like lifted from it, which is like that's what it's all about. It doesn't matter who created it. Well, it does. Like you want to give them credit, but we are all creating this so that you can take it and make another system better, which is what's so special about Trio and why it's so great that you're doing this. Let's get into what's coming next. So we already said this is .2.0. But I believe you guys are both running version 1 or near to it. So there's a new look. Can you just take us into what you've done with this new facelift from the current version available?
I think one of the priorities of the developers that focused on the user interface and user experience of this new look, is to make it more in line with how an iOS or Apple app is supposed to look, supposed to function, so that when you open it, you're not expecting something different than you do from your other apps. The things that you assume about your other apps, you can also assume now about Trio.
Okay, but what does it look like? Tell us. A lot of people are listening, so kind of just explain it in a way where like they'll understand a bit too.
So at the top, we added what we call a bobble. It's a circle with the Trio colors and a little arrow. The arrow moves based on what your blood sugar is doing. What I believe is going to be shared is a screenshot of dark mode, which is my favorite because it really makes the color of the Trio colors at the top pop. And it shows you kind of what your blood sugar is, where it's going, shows you the dosing information, all of that information up at the top, and does it in a way that you don't mind staring at this screen for a little bit because I like looking at it
It
because
looks good. It
It's
looks
so
good.
pretty.
it's
Yeah.
kind of
I
it's kind of
used it
sexy
for
if
a
you ask
bit.
me.
I used it for a bit. I used the older version or the one that's really like the mainstream .2.0 right now. And then I switched over to this version at one point. It was like a little branch that you had me get on. And I had to transition back and it was difficult because the way version 1 looks, I'm so excited for people to use it. You can just sit there and look at it. It's so pretty. Magnus, what's some of the stuff like when it gets to like the controls or kind of what are you seeing at the bottom of the home screen?
Well, we've gone from buttons to a more modern iOS app look and feel. So it's tabs at the bottom in an order that makes sense. And when you go into stuff like adjustments in order to do your overrides, it's you can slide to delete and edit, and you can do all of the things that you'd expect from an iOS app.
Ooh, you can slide to delete.
Oh yeah.
That's okay. So that's something that was missing that I wanted so bad. It's so funny how
Yeah,
something
you can
so
slide to
simple,
delete, you can
you
slide
just
to
like made
edit,
me
you can
smile.
change the names of things. I mean, it feels like an iOS app should feel.
Absolutely. In the current version, the one I was using, there were so many tedious actions you had to make in order like to rename something. You had to delete it and then recreate it when it came to override. So that excites me. Another thing in your marketing of version 1, it says that it will be fast and have more efficient performance.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed when I was using the app was that the calculator, it was great. It was a little laggy. It just took a few extra seconds more than I wanted it to. And I don't know if that's going to be fixed here, but what exactly does this mean for
Well,
the
this
system?
is the part of the of version 1 that is taking some time, like really taking some time. User interface, I mean, once we decided where to go, it was kind of not easy, but kind of quick to fix these things. But the back end, that takes time. And I want to talk a little bit about efficiency and battery drain, because all of these. Apps drain your battery, and they do that because, I mean, they're constantly calculating, they're constantly reading a lot of information and making calculations. And um, Trio or iAPS was doing that in a kind of an old-fashioned way, storing information in files. This is a bit technical, so well, bear with me. We've moved from file storage to database storage, which is again how modern iOS apps are supposed to be built. And we've done some restructuring of the entire code as well to make sure that it can do several things at the same time. So when you experienced that it was lagging, it was probably because it was trying to do many things at once, and it wasn't programmed to do that. Version 1 will do that a lot better. And you'll also see that stuff is going faster. I mean, a loop cycle takes 1 second instead of 5. I mean, stuff like that just makes it work faster and more efficient. And that's one of the big changes that we've done. I mean, we've taken all of the front end, I mean, the user interface stuff that doesn't really run now unless you open the app. So it can save a lot of battery if you just let it do its job. If you're like me and you like to look at it because it looks good, it will use more of your battery.
I know another enhancement coming to Trio is expanded caregiver and follow options. What exactly does that mean?
Well, caregiver features have been kind of missing. Remote monitoring has been there using Night Scout, but the ability to set an override, the ability to do a remote bolus, things like that have not been very stable. So we're doing, again, a lot of back-end stuff to make sure that this works, that it's safe. We're implementing safety features to make sure that we can open up for remote bolus without that being a security issue. And we're also using iOS shortcuts, which leads to iOS automations, so that you can, define your own automations using iOS features.
Does that mean that I could say, hey, blah, 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 enter 15 grams of carbs and bolus?
Ultimately, you'll be able to tell Siri to bolus for you or enter an amount of carbs.
Is
But
there a safety precaution that goes into that as to whose voice is saying it?
yeah, we're not done with that feature yet. And safety
Yes.
is, the biggest concern. And that's why for the caregiver, I mean, the remote part of this, we're doing device to device connections so that we are approving a specific device, so that you cannot send, bolus 10 units from any device. There has to be some kind of previous, device approval. So safety first, as always, and we're improving the integration with Loop Follow, which is an app that a lot of people are using as well.
Yeah, and I know there is a difference between Loop Follow and Loop Caregiver. Loop Follow is simply people who are caregivers of people on DIY Loop. They're following along. I believe Trio works with that already. But Loop
Yes.
Caregiver, the one where decisions can be made and treatment can be given remotely. So that is something that you're looking to bring to Trio. Is that version 1, you think, or is that something that's going to come down the line later?
Well, Loop Caregiver was made specifically for Loop, and we're seeing that we need to make this as a separate thing for Trio. So we're probably not going to use Loop Caregiver, but we're going to do the same set of features, and we don't know yet how many of these features will be included in release 1. We haven't decided yet. But there's a lot of good features coming. There's a GitHub page where you could enter your feature requests. And, with a team of over 40 people, we are able to actually bring most of these features into the app at some point.
Yeah, so this current version is called 0.2.0. Does that mean that we're going to see a .3, a .4, a .5, a .6
No.
before version 1? No.
No.
So why .2, not .3 for Trio?
We didn't want to do
was-
we didn't want to do 0.0.0 because it's more than 0. We've done some work, right? We've done a significant amount of work. But we also didn't want to name it 1.0 because it's not the app that we see Trio as being. It's the foundation for what we build Trio on. So it's you might see like a 0.2.1 or any kind of little updates that we make along the way could increase that number. I'm not going to say we're going to go from 0.2 to 1 directly. So there could be some updates along the way as we get closer to 1. but it's not. We're not going to go 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you don't have to wait to get to 9 before we get to 1.0. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I said this earlier in the show, is that DIY Loop is like that gold standard open source app that people use, where even endocrinologists and educators feel comfortable talking about it. Not all of them, but they feel comfortable considering it or mentioning it to their patients to take a look at. Do you hope that Trio becomes, I mean, I assume that you hope that Trio becomes, just as much of a standard in this sector. How long do you think that's going to take? And what's going to need to go into it to do that?
I think it's already kind of there in terms of like what efforts we need to do to make it worthy, I'll say. I
And worthy's
think
different, right? Because like the settings are not easy.
no, no. So I think we, to get to the point where Loop is today, would probably take us as many years as it has taken Loop to get there. Loop has a long history of various volunteers and developers working and creating documentation and videos and presentations. There are research studies that have been done on Loop participants. There is an abundance of things that Loop has that Trio is not going to have anytime soon. Just because it takes a long time to establish yourself in the way that Loop has. What Trio hopes to do is model itself after an established app like Loop, because it has gained that respect in the diabetes community, both among patients and providers. And the way it has done so is because it is built by and used by people with diabetes, parents of children with diabetes, and because it is used on their children or on themselves, what they are putting into it is just a baseline of safety. Like, I don't want to do something that's going to mess up my own health. It's going to put me in the hospital. That's not what I want to do, or that's going to put my child. So that is a baseline. We have focused on ensuring that we course correct some of the things that we saw elsewhere that we didn't agree with, that we thought put the entire community at risk, that put Loop's reputation at risk, that put Android APS's reputation at risk, that put Open APS's reputation at risk. Something that all 3 of those apps, or algorithms, because Open APS is an algorithm, not an app, that all 3 of those systems have, from the beginning, really set themselves apart from just some guy in a basement doing whatever the hell he wants for the fun of it. Like, that's not what developers do. Developers of these automated insulin systems are like really focused on doing it the right way and looking at the research that supports what they do. And we just want to continue that. So I hope that one day we'll be as amazing as Loop. I hope that we'll have the documentation. I think we've got the community, because the Loop community is part of our community. But we're not out there to replace Loop. We're there to join Loop, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's an alternative. And it will always be. I mean, it's a different way of dosing insulin. So I think it's great that we have the options that we have. And Trio is going to be, I mean, we will continue to build it for ourselves and for the community. That's the goal. And we're doing so, I mean, our code is hosted within the Night Scout Foundation. There's a reason for that. We want to be taken seriously, and we want to make sure that what we do is safe.
I'm so excited to see where Trio goes. If people want to learn more about it or ask people about it, find it, to build it themselves, what are some of the resources that we can put in the description of this show that they can, seek out?
There is triodocs.org is how you can find out how to build it and the instructions. There is a Facebook group called Trio, and there is also a Discord channel also called Trio. So you can find us in any of those places. And then, like Magnus said, we are hosted by Night Scout. So if you go to the Night Scout GitHub page, you can find Trio alongside Android APS as one of the repositories that you could build.
Great. And I know Loop and Learn has done some sessions. I'm not sure if those are still fully relevant, but I'm sure there's a lot of great information that could, be taken into how to navigate the algorithm. And then of course, you two were already on my show. I love this Trio. So if people want to hear more about your experience using it, both of your experience, but also just the inner workings of this app and the algorithm, that is still extremely relevant information and worth giving a listen to. And all of that's going to be in the description. But yeah, thank you both for coming on the show. I can't wait to see how this moves along, and I would love to have both of you on in the future again as things continue to move.
We'll be back for version 1.0.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. What do you think about Trio? Do you use it? Have you used iAPS, or do you use another open source app? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to hear more about DIY, give this video a like and check out my other episodes that I have linked in the show notes on DIY Loop and iAPS. I will continue this story as it evolves. I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.